Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, well, we've got plenty to do. If you're a returning viewer or subscriber, or you're even new to the channel, I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and please subscribe if you find this interesting at all, or maybe you're inclined to do so. I'd greatly appreciate that as well. And tell your friends if you think they'd be interested in short track racing content, engineering, fabrication, mechanical work, whatever the case is. It's all obviously on an amateur level, and sometimes it's informative, and sometimes I'm making all of the mistakes, but I don't hide any of that from you. Today, we're getting back to work. Obviously, we've been working on this thing on and off all week, month, years, whatever the case is. But I left off the last video because I was kind of busy doing other stuff and working on road cars. I didn't have a lot of time to put together a decent video for you all, and I do apologize for that. And well, we got the rear in last video, and we got a bunch of other stuff done. We made it so that we can actually work on it now. We got it to the point where parts were installed. I cut that thing out of the front end so that I could actually get to the pitman arm and we can start working on the steering and stuff. First things first, though, I got to kind of show you what's going on with the brakes because I'm a little bit intrigued. So if you recall from the last video, I cut the lollipop mount out of this side because the bolts for the idler arm have to pass through it. That side can stay. Nothing's going through there except the steering box bolts, and they can already pass by it anyway. It doesn't matter. My issue is this. Obviously, that's not an issue. That is quite good, actually. That thing could probably go all day. The pads, rotors, calipers are all the same age on both sides. Everything's all the same. I bought them all at the same time. The only thing I didn't change are the lines, including the flex lines. So this one, that's not great. So that's dragging. So we got to figure that out. That could also be causing some of my brake pressure issues. So what I did was I got the T-junction kind of ghetto. I'm going to redo it, someday, but today's not that day because it's still below the master cylinder height, so that's not a big deal. It's got factory lines. They're not kinked. Everything flows just fine. So I'm going to replace the T-junction with this, and I've got this old late model style flex hose sitting here. This is kind of more like a rear one that you would run, your brake lines down to the back, tee off, be hooked to the chassis, and then you just run a longer flex hose from the chassis to the caliper on individual corners so that you wouldn't have to run like a factory style flex hose, which is eventually what I'm going to do. Just not at this moment because I'm just trying to figure out this brake issue here. The rears have to get bled. I might as well fix this problem too, because when you bleed brakes, what you want to do, according to Willwood, who makes the brakes in these cars, or this car at least, you do it side to side. So you do right side and left side, front and back. Because I've got one of them brake balance bars and like remote style, I don't know if you can see it, but remote style master cylinders. The brake balance bar, you've got two master cylinders, front and rear. So when you open a bleed screw on one side, both the masters can push all the way out, and therefore you have a bigger chance at keeping air from staying in the master cylinder, and you can push the whole thing empty, basically. So you're pushing a lot of fluid, and it's going to both sides, and since I'm now replacing this, it's a good opportunity to do that. So I figured that might help a lot with a lot of the brake issues that I've been having with this car. I think the only brake issues that I have left are the fact that most of the time I run a stock style axle, which C-clips, if anybody knows what those are. They're the things that retain your axles in the rear end. Really antiquated if you want to run circle track stuff, but they don't really make a C-clip eliminator kit for the type of rear that I run that doesn't require a lot of fabrication, and I'm just not interested in destroying rear ends because I did it wrong. So I've got the Ford 9-inch in here, and usually, because they have individual hubs, Or if you have the bolt-in style axles, at least the axle doesn't have C-clips. It's got a C-clip eliminator or a sealed bearing or something like that, so it can't walk in and out of the housing. So therefore, if your axle is walking in and out of the housing, it could be moving your brake caliper back and possibly losing brake pressure because it's returning fluid to the master, and you got to push the pedal down further in order to regain all of that room you just lost in the piston throw. So, God, I'm talking a lot. Anyway, other than that, I think that going back to the Ford 9-inch rear, fixing all the stuff in the front, the car's going to drive completely different. Let's get the brakes figured out as well, and let's see if we can get rid of that damn brake drag by fixing that brake hose issue. That's what I meant. So I switched this over, cleaned it up with some brake parts cleaner, and I bled all the brakes. And it's probably worse. Actually, it's exactly the same. So I don't really know what to do there except leave it because I've already tried changing stuff. Maybe if I just redo the entire brake line and stuff and all this other junk, and maybe someday I'll fix it. But right now is not that time. The brake pedal's really tough though. Like, it's really nice. It's got good pedal feel. So what are you shooting out there?
Are you recording?
I'm always recording, boy.
So you actually are recording?
Yes, of course I'm recording. Either way, the pedal is really good. So I'm just going to leave it. So now we got to get the car down. I think we got to put wheels on it. But yeah, it's got to go down so that we can start working on the front end. However, I think that's just going to have to wait till tomorrow, because I actually had a decent win today with my road car that I've been struggling for months to fix. Fingers crossed it actually does work, because it's due for emissions on the 11th and today is the 7th, and I still have to drive it enough miles to clear the readiness out of it so that it will actually pass emissions that way, as well as not throwing a check engine light. So pray for me. But anyway, I'm going to go and relax because I needed a win. Hopefully I just got one. This thing is ready to go on the ground, and I'll be back tomorrow. It's the next day. I'm fresh off of the old treadmill and workout machine, and clearly it looks like it because I haven't lost a damn pound. But anyway, I have overcome one of my issues here. One of my problems I was having was that the idler arm, the bolts to mount it, were in the way of my lower radiator hose there. And I got it to a point where I can, I got one of them little adjustable jobbies so that I can move that down and get it in between the bolts. And now it won't rub on nothing or cause a hole or have some kind of other issue happen. So that's been figured out. So now the car is ready. I'm gonna be diligent about it. I think I'll check the tire pressures and make sure they're actually at race pressure or whatever, because all the variables that go into this sort of thing. We'll drop the back onto the ground, and then we'll drop the front onto probably some low jack stands, or at least something that I can still work on. Maybe I'll just put the back down for now, but I gotta center the steering again. Actually, do I have to center that now, or are we checking bump steer and then we're gonna center it and then we'll string the car? Maybe I'll just measure it to see if it's straight, and then we'll put her down as far as we can, and then I might have to break out the leaky bump steer gauge and see what happens. got her down on the jack stands as far down as it'll go. Still kind of seems to be a little too high for whatever the bump steer gauge is, but you know what? I might just say, maybe I'll just get a taller jack. I don't know. Or maybe I'll just stick plywood under the jack, or I'll get a scissor jack, or I'll do whatever. But the arms on that bump steer gauge, which obviously you can't see from here, I've heard that guys are cutting these down because they put their cars at ride height. Personally, as long as you measure where your lower control arm is in relation to the chassis so that you get your ride heights from that, and then you can, you know, measure. It's a lot easier on not stock frame cars. Or you could hang a plumb bob and that'll tell you, you know, where it's supposed to be and stuff. You can do any manner of things to just get a consistent measurement. I took a measurement and I just kind of taped it to that. That's going to start there. And then you're going to measure, and we'll get there. But the wheel isn't pointed straight, which is interesting, because I strung it and straightened it last time. And then I think I changed the center link in it to something that I could actually use at this track instead of something I can't use at Stafford. So it probably changed. Damn it all. So what I'll do is I'll just straighten the wheel out as best I can, and then I'll lock it off, and then we'll just have to recenter it when I go to string the car again. But we'll get this thing plated up and get an idea of what we're looking for here, if that jack has any oil left in it. So we know that anything made by Performance Tool is usually kind of a pile of crap, and I would apologize, but when you sell new things and they leak this badly, and they're usually kind of piles of crap, I don't apologize. But if you have a jack like this and you don't think you have enough height, or you got to keep dropping the car down and cutting these things to try to make it so that you can actually use it at ride height because you don't think the bottle jack can reach, well, a lot of these have a screw mechanism built into them, and you can gain a heck of a lot of height out of it. Like, that's all the way up on that, and it's about 3 inches. So you can gain about 3 inches of height on that just by, giving her a little screw job there. Well, not like that. But anyway, let's jam her under there and straighten her out and start taking some measurements, maybe. Quick test on this thing just to make sure it works, and it looks like it kind of does at this point. I got the wheel as eyeball straight as I could. I wish that I could string it right now. I probably could if I was a little bit more ambitious, but at this point I just want to make sure the stuff is working. I set it to the ride height setting from the frame mark to the chassis, well, the lower control arm mark, and then I set the whole thing up, kind of, got the feel of it, made sure everything worked and that it was close enough on the jack so that we could, move her in to the point where these are going to meet on the flat plate, made sure the flat plate was level, and then jacked it up 1 inch. And I see that it's bumping in, looks like about 16 thousandths, which is like 0.016. I noticed the center link is down, like it's actually set down in the car. And the tie rod ends are actually kind of angled up, so that makes sense as to why it would be towing in that much. What you really kind of want, and this is not really professional knowledge at this point, if your center link is down and your tie rod ends are pointed upwards, if you're looking at it at ride height, you're likely going to be towing in. If your center link is up and your tie rods are kind of pointed down like this on each side, you're probably going to be towing out under bump. What you really want is to Well, you can play with bump as much as you want, depending on what your car does, what kind of track you're racing at, what kind of stuff you do. So I'm going to keep doing this, and we're going to keep trying to fiddle with this and see how that goes. Unfortunately, today was one of my short days because I worked and came home, hit the exercise machines up, and then lost track of time because I was busy doing other stuff in here, like trying to get this car situated and try to get this nasty old jack working again. And well, I ran out of time for today, so I'll be back tomorrow. I'll get out of work. I'll come straight in here probably, and we'll start fiddling with some bump steer and see if we can't get the car at least done with that and strung and aligned. Once that's done, we could just reassemble this thing. So fingers crossed that we get a little bit of momentum going our way and we can get this thing on the road. Now, clearly, if you're allowed to like drill out the spindle end of your tie rod and put some kind of a bolt with spacers on it, that would make your life a lot easier, because in order for these types of G-body cars, which I'm working on right now, in order for them to get really, really close to zero on the old bump steer there, the center link might come close to the oil pan. So if you could actually do that, like if that's allowed in your rule book, it's probably a really good idea, because using stock stuff like I have to use, except for at, I think Thompson, I might be allowed to run something drilled out, but I really want to leave this car as legal for Stafford as humanly possible, so I don't want to mess with a brand new set of spindles. But that's pretty much what you can look forward to, but trying to get it on the steering arm end is a lot easier than trying to do it in the middle. So I'm using a new microphone, and if it doesn't work out, well, my apologies, but I've got this thing as, well, not bad. Pretty decent. I can make a few more adjustments here, but I want to get at least another reading because, well, it doesn't take a heck of a lot. So, oh, this thing needs to be really cranked down there. Don't like that. It's not very, yeah. This thing is not what you'd call really accurate, because it's pointing crooked, not straight into the device, which would be much more preferable. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out because they have a flat surface machined in so that the machine screw here can hold it into place. I typically set them to hub height, obviously, like the center of the hub, and square with the board. But these are absolutely not square because whoever drilled that must have been a Friday, because it is not 90 degrees. And, well, I can make it 90, but I just have to flip it around. So, unfortunately, I now have to fix the tools again. Okay, so since I actually had to bring the car up a click or two on the jack stands, I had to reset the heights here because this was like 17 from the ground. Now it's like 18 and a half. So I took the old tape measure out, just said, yeah, that's about flat. I got to do it flat. Yeah, it's about 18 and a half. About 18 and a half. About 18 and a half. Yep. What I did was, you see this flat surface kind of carved into it so that you could get the set screw. Well, like I said, this set screw here, if you look from the top, that's facing like that way. Actually, there you go. That's a little bit more square instead of this way. So I just took each one out of each post and just switched it around. Now I can actually square them off. So that's pretty cool. Now we're going to get a measurement at 1 inch or 2, because I don't know if I can go 3 inches without bottoming this thing out. And let's be fair, probably not going to bottom out because I got enough ride height over here. But I might go 3. We'll see how many inches I can get out of this thing and get measurements from. I'm going to have to write them all down. I got to find pad and paper and stuff. So either way, this is going to be a time-consuming process, so we got to get going. So I'm sitting here contemplating life itself and why this just doesn't seem to be working for me. And then I realized when you're doing bump steer, I don't think it really matters where the center link goes and how the arm angles actually are, as opposed to the arm angle in relation to the lower control arm. Like if they're parallel from like the inner bolt of the trailing or the lower control arm to the ball joint and the inner end of the tie rod to the outer end, if those two lines are parallel, I'm pretty sure that's how you eliminate bump steer, not by how I was saying before. And the math here kind of checks out to that, because I tried relearning how to do this by doing it the way that I said, and that just kind of went the wrong direction. But then I did it the way that I remembered, and now it's kind of making more sense. So like I said before, I don't hide things from you guys. If I make a mistake, I make a mistake. Again, this isn't a learning channel by any means. This is me trying to relearn stuff that I forgot a long time ago. And yeah, we're definitely doing that right now. It's going to take a lot of time. I've been in the garage all night since I got home from work, and man, I am tired. But you know what? I feel like we're doing something. I feel like we're making progress, and I feel like I'm starting to relearn things that I haven't remembered in a long time. And, I'm going to go back under there and look at how it looks now that I've remembered a few little minor details and see if I can't make it better. I'm learning a heck of a lot, and a lot of it was very confusing until I started to think about it. And I realized that dependent upon the camber and the caster that you have could change how you read your bump steer, because at least in theory, that's my theory. I'm not sure if I'm actually correct or not, because we run a buttload of caster in this thing just as a crutch to try to get this thing to try to tighten up a little bit, especially on exit, which was that whole problem I had for the last, 2 or 3 years. But I noticed that when you would jack the thing up, the amount of arm angle would change on the top, and the amount of caster and camber you have would start to pull the upper pin in, and it would start changing the readings. Like I'd only get 18 thousandths of toe out on the front, but in the back, it would, let's see, that way, yep, goes that way, so it would pull that way. It was pulling the right side, like the rear, because of the arm angles and the top angle and stuff, it was pulling it in like 30 thousandths more than that side, which is very strange. So I'm going to try this on the other side and see what I get, because there's a lot less camber caster over there than there is over here. So I'm going to give that a shot. Unfortunately, that's going to have to wait until at least tomorrow, because I have been not feeling well all night long. I'm paying a horrific penance for the sins of my gluttony. Therefore, I'm going to kind of leave this for now and go take care of myself and go drink a whole lot of water and relax for a minute. And then hopefully we can get that left front done tomorrow and get a number and figure out what to do from there. It's the next day, and I started moving stuff over to the other side, but yeah, that jack is... I've already mentioned how much that jack is kind of a piece of crap, and it's left literal, actual puddles of hydraulic jack oil on the ground. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I gotta get a replacement for that. That's not gonna live very long. So I genuinely hope that everybody has held on to their comments before they watch the end of the video, because every single thing that I had tried to tell you was wrong until I got to the very end there, when I talked about mirroring the angles between the lower control arm and the tie rod and trying to make them parallel as much as possible and intersecting lines and stuff. Again, I'm not an expert. This is not a learning channel. Again, I'm really trying to do my best here, but they say the best thing you can do is intersect, or not intersect, but parallel and draw lines and stuff, like a line here through the ball joints and like a line from the lower control arm and then the steering rod and then the upper. So it's got to be like this, and it's all got to be parallel, and it's all got to meet, and then you'll get rid of your bump steer and stuff like that. I screwed up before when I said, oh yeah, the center link's here, and then down here you'll get toe in and toe out and stuff. Disregard literally all of that. My problem is I haven't done this in a very, very long time. And in order for me to relearn how to do this, I have to do it and get my hands dirty. And you'll see on the ground in my next shot, I'll show you all the other stuff that I've been doing. I've been experimenting, and I've been trying to basically learn by doing, or relearn by doing, instead of just trying to read it on a book. Because if I do it by learning, I know it sounds stupid, it sounds really weird, I will learn it more in depth if I do it myself. That's why I took all these parts off. That's why I took the center links out. That's why I'm experimenting with all sorts of different parts and different ways of using them and different heights and all this other stuff. And that's why I figured out that I was wrong. Completely wrong. The center link angle being up or down is not what matters. It matters if you make the lines all parallel and you draw the lines. Go on Circle Track magazine, or go on any of these other websites that are actually reputable with setup stuff. There's archives online, and you can Google it and stuff, and you can find all the diagrams and all the basic stuff to do this. Yeah, you'll probably need a gauge to do it, but if you can get it to look like those little drawings and schematics that they have, you'll get really, really close. I mean, let me show you. Like I said, I have all these tools. I got the Pitman arm. That's a stock one that hasn't been heated and bent and stuff. And I got my pickle forks and hammers and wrenches and that thing. That I cut a boot off of it because I don't know why it was on there, but it was covering up my shims and stuff. But I got my adjustable center link in there because Thompson allows me to use that. And I can't use, well, I think I can at Thompson, but I don't want to drill and put bolts in my spindles because these are brand new spindles. I have plans to go to Stafford and use these. That's why I don't want to screw them up. I need to keep this as factory as possible. So in experimenting with stock stuff and the adjustable stuff, I figured out that what I was doing before with the adjustable stuff was actually correct. I think I'd mentioned before that it was not right, but, and I know this sounds really dumb and it doesn't sound believable, but I remeasured it, and I even went as far as to putting like an angle finder on the plate face to try to adjust for some of the camber on this plate. And then I put a piece of wood under that so that these would be kind of parallel. And I measured back from these and made sure everything was all square and stuff. And then I measured it from ride height up. And I was getting confused before because I'd watch these gauges just spin. But that's because of the camber angle pulling the wheel as it comes up. It's pulling the wheel inboard. So it's pulling it away from the gauges. The only thing that really matters there in my mind, again, I'm not an expert, please, but if they're both spinning, you just got to keep track of how far out they're actually going. So you got to start with a number and end with a number. But you'll also see that they're like mirroring each other, which is nice. This one's almost 0 and that one's almost 0. At 1 inch of bump on this, you won't believe it, but I think it only bumped out 0.003 of an inch. And I know that sounds really silly, but I measured it like 4 times. I can't get any other number. So I think we actually kind of got it. Again, obviously I will go and recheck it again just to make sure my numbers aren't wrong and pay attention to how often the dials spin and you got to write down everything. You can't just remember everything. I know I can't. I've been in racing for holy crap 25 years. So I've sucked a lot of carbon monoxide, and I have hit the wall a fair share of times, so my brain probably not so great on two fronts. So I can't remember much, but if you write it down, you can remember anything as long as you look at it and remember where you put the paper. So I'm going to go back and recheck it, see if that's okay. Then we're going to move back to the right side because I never actually paid attention to the numbers the proper way. We're going to recenter it, redo the right front, recheck that one because the left front seems fine. Right, back to work. As I'm watching Stafford, I'm taking another quick look here on the left side. And you know what? I'm happy with the numbers. All told, I think the car is only bumping out less than 50 thousandths of an inch. That's not bad. I mean, how much is a tenth of an inch? Obviously, it's 0.1. That's half of that. How much toe do people typically run on short tracks? Eighth of an inch. What's an eighth of an inch? 0.125. So even that, I think that's 0.125. Numbers. So if it's towing out 50 thousandths of an inch, just run a little less toe. You'll be fine. Run a 16th. I don't know. All right, so we can get that out and stop it from leaking oil all over my floor, which I don't know how this jack is still working, considering how much it's bled on my floor, because it's just a complete mess. I'm just basically using it because the only reason is it's still working. So that's it. That's all I got. Let's get this stuff carefully put away. Springs and shocks back in it. Back on the damn ground. And let's start stringing and aligning it. For reals. TV in the background. I don't have my mic on either, but I think I'm going to call it for the night because I'm actually getting some work done. We got a lot of progress done on this thing. We got her on turning plates. I got the steering squared off. We got the bump steer pretty good. I mean, I'm very kind of pleased with that. Could we do better? Maybe. I have to put water in it. I forgot to do that because I had to pull that lower radiator hose off, which was kind of a pain. I got her on the turning plates, and it looks like we're going to have to do a little bit of an alignment over here on the right front. I think this center link might have a little different position for the hole here, but that's okay. So it's not too far off, though. We'll get her recentered up. Plus, I got that different rear end in the car. Hopefully that one will string out well. And I think we can get the stringing done and accomplished tomorrow, and we can finish up the video for you guys. But as you can hear in the background, I'm listening to Stafford, and I'd really like to go watch the rest of that because it's about halfway through their program, and that looks like a lot of fun. Hopefully all the work that we're putting in this year on this thing will pay us dividends next year when we go there. And I'm really hoping so because I really could use a few good runs to get my confidence back, and with all the stuff we're finding in the car, maybe that'll happen. And I am still doing a lot of research to get ready and a lot of work behind the scenes as well as what I show on camera. So I will come back tomorrow after work and we'll get the alignment done on this thing. Morning, everybody. Well, actually, I don't wear a watch. It's afternoon, and I'm just cleaning up, doing stuff. I spent all morning actually doing yard work, cleaning up the yard, doing all sorts of fun, non-fun adult things. Otherwise, now that I'm exhausted from doing that, we got to string this car, and there's a lot of stuff in the way to do that. So I guess we'll have to get to work on that, and maybe we'll finish the alignment. So the string seems to be in line. It seems to be measuring properly, but man, it's like I take my right angle there and I just get it to the edge of the line, stick a tape measure in the holes that I put to the chassis, because I string off the chassis on this car. And I gotta be honest with you, this side usually comes out okay because the frame rails are nice and flat. You know, it's somebody replaced the factory rail with a piece of tubing, and since tubing is, you know, nice and flat, it's easy to string off of. And since they brought it out to the outer edge to meet whatever stock chassis it mates up with, again, it makes life really easy. I was just shocked that when I put a quick eyeball to the line, and I stuck my little quick gauge, which I don't know where I put it, but you know, that pipe that I have that's cut to a specific length so that I can at least eyeball the lines and then go back and measure it for precision later. Well, I eyeballed it, grabbed the square, stuck it on the floor, measured it nice and careful, and used that little body hammer to tap everything and move stuff, and it was dead on the number I wanted. Then I go to this side, to the left side, and now we've got problems with this left side. And for some reason, I seem to always have problems with the left side. Every time I try to measure off of this hole here in the back, it does not work. The front one is right on the flat plate of the chassis, no problem. The one back here, well, it's again stock chassis car. It's about right there. And remember, I cut the clip off of this and redid it. And yeah, it fixed a lot of the reactiveness of the rear of the car, and it takes adjustments and actually works now, but I can't string to that corner. So I need to come up with some kind of a solution, because you know what? Let me get you in there and I'll show you the chassis. Now, do you see that little square cut off piece that used to be some kind of a body brace on the chassis? Yeah, that's pretty much where my tape measure ends up. And I don't like that. I need to make sure that I have a flat surface there that I can measure to. Otherwise, the measurement's going to be off. So I'm thinking I might grind that off, take and find some kind of, I don't know, a flat piece of metal or something, and just kind of make it so that that spot is flush with the bulges on the chassis, so that when I go to throw a tape measure in there, it hits that instead of bouncing all over the place. I could be off by like a quarter to an eighth of an inch or whatever. So I'm going to go find a piece of metal, do some grinding, maybe some welding. Maybe we'll fix that. I'm going to need you all to stand back and marvel at my genius. See, this is just a little piece of very thin aluminum plate, like aluminum sheet, and some, not even Harbor Freight, even worse, it's Dollar General duct tape. So I've already tested it, and it is mint. It works perfect. To put a tape measure up against it, it doesn't change anything. So we are good to go. Alignment's going well. Obviously, I didn't put you to time lapse because I'm just kind of piddling around, not really doing a heck of a lot more than just kind of watching TV and, you know, trying to enjoy my day off. But we got the front aligned. It wasn't off very much. Again, we changed the center link, so maybe the pickup points. It's an aftermarket one from a stock one. So obviously the pickup points might be a little off, so I just kind of gave her a couple turns, and now she's back straight again. My biggest issue here, though, is the rear. Oh, of course, because, this rear is, well, it's not in the car straight. It's close, but it's not straight. If I had to wager a guess, it's about a 1/4 inch skewed this way. So if you measure the back, the front's further away from the line, so that means it's this way in the car. It is essentially towed in on this side and out on that side by about a 1/4 inch. So to correct that, I was thinking about pulling the old, I think they call these a rasp. I don't know. Throw some oil in her, put the rasp in there, drop the lower out of one side. I think that one's got to go forward and this one's got to go backwards. So the back side of that mount and the front side of that mount. And once I get her straight, we'll take the welder and we'll weld the washers in so that the bolt can't slop around or anything. And fingers crossed, it's not too much that it'll bind up the uppers. Like, we'll loosen up the uppers a little bit and then see if we can't get that skew straightened out of it, because I don't want the thing to be towing the wrong way down the track and screwing up the handling. So I guess if we're going to do it, we better do it right. Well, guys, I've been working at this thing for a few hours and getting the strings back straight again and resetting everything after I had to, adjust on the left rear there. And I got it to a point where the right rear is measuring straight. It's within tolerance of straight because of ride height differential and how the rear trailing arms can affect the skew of the rear end. It's within tolerance. It's essentially straight. The left rear, however, is another problem. Like, if we take a measurement here, that's just an arbitrary number. It says 7 7/8. Yeah, touched it, whoops. But that says 7 and like a 32nd past 7/8. So it's essentially a 32nd of an inch towed out. We move over here, and again, arbitrary number, it could be different. I got 7 3/4, and I got 7 15/16. Yeah. So that means that this thing is towed in about a 1/4 inch on the left side. Unfortunately, the only way that I had to straighten this rear was taking a couple old wheels and measuring toe, and then taking a porta power and a chain and just kind of pushing and pulling and yanking arms and legs and whatever the hell is on this thing to try to make it straight. And the last time I did it, it measured straight. Now, I don't remember how long ago that was, but I don't recall it also getting hit. So how do I fix this? What do I do? It's late. I got to get the video out to you guys. It's already Sunday. I put the videos out on Monday. I don't know. I thought this rear was straight. So we just keep running into stupid problems, and we keep having the same issue every single week. And I'm kind of just really irritated about it, because the rear I pulled out is bent. I think it's 3/8 of an inch towed in on one side. I think the left rear is towed in at 3/8 of an inch. This one, I'm measuring it again. This one says it's towed in a 1/4 inch. So is it my measurements? Or is it towed in? Like, what's going on here? I'm not quite ready to give up. I think I'm going to work until dark at least, and then probably edit this video. But what do I do? Like, am I measuring wrong? I just don't get it. Like, just doesn't make sense. And for both rears that I took out of the car to be towed in 1/4 of an inch on the left rear just doesn't make sense. I gotta do a lot of research here, but I'm gonna keep trying, and by the time the end of the night comes is when I finish this video, so we'll just keep plugging away. Unfortunately, knowing that the left rear is what's towed out on this rear end, and it's at such an amount that I feel like it would upset the chassis. Well, all the work that I just did to put this in, bleed the brakes, do all that, was for nothing. So that means I now have to pull these strings up that I just tripped over. And I have to completely redo every stupid thing that I just did to the rear end of this car that I'm not happy about. If I'm going to straighten a rear, I might as well just straighten the one that I took out because it's already out, and then just swap the transmission. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. On that depressing note, I might as well just end the video now because I'm out of time and I have to get this out and ready. Well, ready and out, but whatever. And I just am defeated at this moment, so that sucks. So I got to get this thing put back together somehow with whatever energy I have left, and at least we got a little bit of time until next race. And I mean, that's what happens when you work on a car yourself. You can sit here and you can do all this work and get it straight and put it together, and or at least think you're straight and get the alignment done. And we got a whole bunch of stuff done on the steering and got the bump steer out of it. We got the geometry right. And then we go to the back and it fails. So that's going to be the next video, is us completely redoing everything we already did. And look at all the viewers who are going to tune in and watch what they've already watched. Perfect. That's what people are interested in, is the same thing they've already seen 15 times. So until next time, if you haven't, by the way, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. If you've got friends who would be interested in complete failure and mechanics and fabrication work and race cars on an amateur level and everything else on an amateur level, please let me know and maybe send them my way. And I could really use the subscriber base because I'm trying to give back to short track racing and try to get people interested in doing this by showing people you can do it on your own. But you know what? It is frustrating, and it does kind of become a pain half the time, 3/4 of the time, and all the time. But if you love it, you're going to keep doing it like I did, because I've been doing it for 25 stupid years of abject misery. So anyway, thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and until next time.